Thanks. Eva Stell, Rothschild. I was in the past, when there have been major increases in the price of oil, they were considered as bad things equivalent to tax increases. Could you expand on why the reverse seems so different this time around?
I mean, why the price?
Why, with the decline in the price of oil, it's not viewed as a tax cut and a very strong pro-consumer event?
So I think it's a very good question. And if you had told me what was going to happen to the price of oil and you had asked me to predict what the reverberations would be, I would have gotten it wrong. So, but in the spirit of the person who said that econometrics is the study of forecasting the past with ever greater precision, I can attempt some elements of explanation. And I think three stand out. One, some of it is that you never, when the price of oil was going up, you never knew whether it was the fact that the price of oil was going up or the fact that there was a big change that was causing it. And that whenever there's a big change, the losers are more unhappy than the winners are happy. And so on net, it has a negative aspect. And I think there's some of that dynamic going on. Second, I think there may be it is the feature of fracking that it is fast on, fast off. And so at other moments when the price of oil went down, people were embarked on $2 billion exploration programs, of which they'd already spent the first $1.2 billion. And it was kind of hard to turn off, because you had to do the program to get it. You had to do the program to get anything, so you kept going. In contrast, fracking, it's more like a vending machine. You put your money in, you wait 3 months, and you get your oil out. And so when the price goes to where it is now, you get a sudden collapsing of the investment spending. And I think the third thing is that I'm not sure we know quite what liquidations are being generated as a consequence of this. And I think there's at least a possibility that some of the producing countries that are now under very severe financial pressure have to liquidate something. And the thing that's easiest to liquidate is their public equities. And that's a source of substantial pressure on equity markets. The big puzzle, the big puzzle that is explained by my last remark, but I'm not sure how convincing the explanation is, but I don't have another good explanation, is it's easy to understand why oil should go down and the market should go down as well. If demand's collapsing, suppose you just get really pessimistic news about the world economy, then what would you expect to see? You'd expect to see the price of oil fall, because there isn't going to be any demand, and you'd expect to see markets fall, and you'd expect to see forecasts decline. So in a sense, if the oil decline is caused by demand rather than caused by supply, see, the oil increases that you described were caused by supply interruptions. If this oil decrease is caused by a demand decline, then you'd sort of expect it to go with bad economic news. So I think that's probably core to understanding it. The puzzle is you have a variety of days in the last month, like happened overnight, where there's a pretty clear headline. Oil prices rise on, or oil prices fall on new production from somewhere. So it's pretty clear that the oil price was falling because of a supply bit of news. And even on those days, the stock prices fall, and they fall even in countries like Japan, where there aren't any oil exporters and where it's all oil imports. So I think there's a puzzle, and the liquidations that I described may be an element of the explanation. And the other part of it that's crucial is you'd expect something very different from a demand shock, which is probably the dominant part of what we have now, than from a supply shock.
I just add one or two things. I mean, the one country that seems to be benefiting as much or more than anyone else is probably India, and all this, which is one of the few really also good news stories in the world economically. But it's obviously dramatically decreased its oil import bill. I think there's a difference between the producers and others. I mean, the producers are obviously, Mexico will be hurt, even though they've reduced the percentage of the federal budget that relies on oil revenues by half. Obviously, the Russians, you saw the story perhaps in the New York Times over the weekend. And I think there's interesting questions about, if a Russian economy is shrinking at 3-4%, and the potential for some protests or instability there. And the question Larry asked me about China could also be asked about Russia, whether that would push Russia to be geopolitically more assertive, conceivably more with Russia than with China, given the degree. Russia's less economically interdependent in some ways than China is. In the world, obviously, Saudi Arabia, we talked about that before. Whoops. I would just sort of agree with Larry that I think so much of this, the reason there's not even much more good news is that it's really a combination of American and other supply. Iranian supply will add to it, be a further factor weighing down against prices, and then lower demand. And so that's what's out there. So, and my guess is at the end of the year, it's easy to see oil where it is, plus or minus, rather than in a fundamentally different place, which is still quite a stunning departure from where it was until recently.